does God say about forgiveness? That's what we're going to talk about today. Today, this is a continuation. I have two podcasts, Small Steps with God and Start with Small Steps. The first part of this is in Start with Small Steps, talking about the book, Total Forgiveness by R.T. Kendall. He talks initially about how pastors in African countries had a lot to forgive and how did they go through this process of forgiving. What I'm going to continue on here is the spiritual aspects of it. We are a part of Christianity told to forgive. Just like you want to be forgiven, you should forgive. And we have to follow that. Forgiveness is one of those things where it helps us more than it helps anyone else. Because when we are not forgiving other people, we're just poisoning ourselves. We're just building up resentment. We're locking ourselves into a prison. And yet God says, forgive as I've forgiven you. We hope that God never endingly forgives us, but instead we don't at times forgive other people. And we think, oh, we're supposed to let them off the hook. And that's not true. We're going to soak it in. We're going to face the truth of what's happening. But we should, according to his book, pray that that person has blessings. And that's hard. It's hard for us to do. And Jesus prayed for us when we did horrible things to him. He always prayed for Jerusalem, no matter what Jerusalem was doing to him and was going to do to him. He prayed for forgiveness for everybody. And it is about us. He uses the story of Joseph from the Bible, and I always love this story. He was sold into slavery as a young kid and went to Egypt. And because of the character Joseph had, ended up rising up to a very high position. When he then was faced with his brothers sitting in front of him, and then later in life, when he was in control of Egypt and had grains based on his wisdom, his family, his brothers were standing there facing him. He didn't bring shame on them. He didn't say, ha ha ha, famine, eh? Go ahead and die. None of that. Instead, he worked slowly. I think you can kind of see the process of him getting to that point of where he was feeling his brothers out to see where they were at. And so he was able to do that. And he was able to get to the point where reconciliation was possible. And he understood it. I love that quote. You intended it for ill, but God intended it for good. He understood the big picture here. And so even if they didn't apologize, but they did, I think, even if they did this to him because they were jealous, he was able to do that. And so that is important. And then the next step talks about forgiving God. Because when we forgive God, we sometimes are holding resentment. Why didn't you fix this? Why didn't you change this? Why didn't you save him? This person was sick and we prayed for them. Why didn't you heal them? And we get resentments built in. And again, we're going to learn to forgive God, not because we're correct, not because God wants us to forgive him, but because he understands it's a poison that will eat away at our relationship. It's not a weakness, it is a strength. And in the end, God is the God who sat on the cross. And Jesus is the one who's hanging on a cross and says, forgive them. They know not what they do. That's our model. But let's talk a little bit more about it. You know, when we are looking towards forgiveness, you know, you can say like a prayer, Lord, I choose to forgive. Help my heart to catch up. We always are told to pray, even when our heart's not in it. Or sometimes I always like to call it backing up the prayer. You know, if I say, well, God, give me the strength to do this thing I don't want to do, I back it up and I say, Lord, bring me the kind of heart that wants to do this thing. We want to back it up. And if we're not there, it's okay to ask for it. It's okay to ask God for something we don't deserve, something we're not feeling, that kind of thing. Now, the one thing about Kendall that I liked so much about this book is he gave really good examples of this. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. People always forget that Reverend part, that we have horrible things that are done to us and we are in a place where we could hold a grudge, or instead we can forgive. We can forgive worse things. I think we do that. Like I said, I grew up in a very horrible situation where my dad was an alcoholic. A lot of people's parents are alcoholics, but there are situations where he talked about um, Professor Okumu in Kenya. And this guy used his power to negotiate lasting peace, in Africa. And this guy helped negotiate a peace at the time in South Africa, but it was a message of forgiveness. When we lose that forgiveness, we end up losing the thing that allows us to move past things and to go to that. And he said this next person he talked about, Joseph Tassion, was a college professor at Westminster. Until you totally forgive them, you will be in chains. Release them and you will be released. That's the idea. And so that's ending of vengeance. God says, vengeance is mine in Romans 12:19. He's the one who repays, He's the one who judges. It's not our job. And when we say, I'm going to be the judge, I'm going to exact revenge on the person in your life who hurt you, you're taking and saying, I know better. I know better what to do than what God wants to do. And he says that cessation of negative feelings towards the offender allows the relationship to be restored. That doesn't mean that that person is going to ask for forgiveness. I think about Corey Ten Boom, who forgave the man who abused her sister and murdered her. I think that during World War II, Corey Ten Boom, and if you've never read her book, The Hiding Place, or any of her books, they are amazing, but it was led with forgiveness because she knew that if she did not forgive the people who did things to her family, if you didn't know, she and her family hid Jews in her house during World War II to protect them from the Nazis. She could have resentment. We were doing the right thing. We were championing the right thing. And being unforgiven towards the people or being unforgiven to God. Why didn't you save us? We did the right thing. I think that's the important part of it. But like I said, another good book, if you want to read about forgiveness, is read about the life of Corey Ten Boom. And we continue on. And I think we want to emulate God. I don't know that Adam and Eve asked for forgiveness, but God forgave them, made them close, and made sure that mankind was still blessed by God, even outside the Garden of Eden. The woman who was an adulterer, she never asked for approval. She didn't ask for forgiveness. He forgave her anyway. We get into fights with people. We decide we're right. That's a stance we're going to take. Our mental computer is capable of remembering a lot. And we're not asking our brains to erase it. We're not asking our brains to strike it down. Instead, we're asking for it to reconcile in our hearts so that we're no longer burning with vengeance. We're no longer angry about it. And like I said, it may be that that person never asked for forgiveness. It may be that we're not ready in our hearts yet to do that. But the idea is that we're trying to get the pain out of our own selves, the poison that will not just destroy our relationship with other people, but destroy our relationship with God. Have you met people who are vengeful? And they might be lovely people, except when they get into this anger and bitterness towards maybe a very specific person. They can't let it go. I was listening to an interview with this football player, and you could tell he really is bitter about his family. And I've seen famous girlfriend after famous girlfriend try to reconcile him to his family. He's having none of it. He is having none of it. And that is harsh because I think in the end, it is hurting him. And when you decide to forgive, you are going to have the courage to stand up and say, I forgive. I'm finished with it. And Michelangelo said it this way: you can't forgive without loving. And I don't mean sentimentality. I don't mean mush. I mean having enough courage to stand up and say, I forgive. I'm finished with it. I think that's such a powerful way to go. And again, we see a lot of places in the Bible where this happened. I talked about Jesus already. I talked about Joseph. We talked about God forgiving mankind. But, David could have gone after Saul. Saul did a lot of things to him, and instead he let it go. He tried to reconcile time and time again, and Saul, to his death, never had any of it. And I think when we're sitting there and listening to these messages, it's important for us to think that God always does forgive us, no matter what it is we do, whether it's blatant or accidental, whether we planned it or we didn't plan it. That's the ultimate forgiveness. Peter's sitting there realizing, probably blaming himself that he denied Christ 3 times, just like Jesus said. And instead, God came to him and sat down, ate fish with him. He wanted to forgive Peter and he reinstated Peter because Peter probably was destroyed at this point. We want to restore other people. And like I said, even if they don't ask forgiveness or they maybe don't even know, we are looking for their restoration, that we're looking for blessings in their life, that we're looking like for my dad, that he would sometime overcome this drinking for it. So I hope that that helps. My challenge to you is, can you take an act of prayer, of forgiveness for other people, and ask blessings for them, no matter how angry you are, no matter how long ago this happened, regardless if they ask for forgiveness or not? Can you take the step of praying for someone and see if we can have them start to prosper? Because when the goodness happens to them, it's happening to us as well. And I appreciate you listening. Thanks so much. Remember, you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Leave a comment right here in the channel. I would love to hear from you. If I can pray for you, if I can help you pray for someone forgiveness and something, I would love to do so. Thanks so much. Have a great week.